Good morning, everyone. And I should say good afternoon for you. So it's probably it's about 5 o'clock there in Isle of Wight. And welcome to our series of Ordinary People, Extraordinary Lives, where we just chat with folks that have been on a spiritual journey, that have been awakened to spirit, and have sort of moved their lives into sharing what they know and their experiences and that kind of thing. So we're delighted to bring to you Jim McQuitty. Do you go by Jim or James?
I go by either, but mostly Jim. But
Mostly.
then sometimes when people don't know me personally, they call me James because my books are titled, as with my name, James McQuitty.
Oh, okay, cool. So it's kind of fascinating how the World Wide Web works and how it makes us all neighbors. You may be on the other side of the pond, but we know each other through an email. So if I just share a little bit of how we met Jim, um, first of all, he is, and Milt called you this a prolific writer. Would you call yourself a prolific writer? um,
Uh, I'm probably, but repeating myself over and over in different ways half the time.
Perfect. And don't we all, because the message is uh you tell it one way to somebody and a different way to somebody else and they get it. So I think that works really well. But anyway, he's a prolific writer. He lives on the Isle of Wight in England, and we'll look forward to chatting a little bit more about that and what led you there. A few days after we posted our CASA interview with Summer Bacon and Dr. Peebles, you happened to stumble. Were you looking for that uh, information on Dr. Peebles, and that's how you stumbled on our interview? Is that how that
Yeah,
happened?
I think it was. I changed email address at one point, and I'd lost contact briefly with Summer Bacon, Summer, and so then I resubscribed. She emailed me to say, "Oh, thank you for resubscribing because I thought I'd fallen out with you or something." And then she told me she'd been doing a few interviews. So and one of the ones I think she has links on her website, and one of them was yourself. So I went and had a look, and then I commented and so forth.
Right. So
It
you
was it was
emailed
lovely
us.
to it was lovely to see Summer and hear what she had to say, but also, of course, Dr. Peebles.
Yes. And as you heard on that interview, he played a really important part in my own spiritual awakening. And I just absolutely love Dr. Peebles, and I can hear him every once in a while, talking to me. And it's usually something profound when I most need it. So he's a lovely, lovely spirit. So I'm glad you caught us that way. But you wrote us, emailed us. That's how we got to know you. And this series, Ordinary People, Extraordinary Lives, is just about, we're not necessarily interested in the famous people. We're interested in just the people living ordinary lives that have done something extraordinary, in their spiritual lives. And I think that you mentioned in an email that what interested you in that Dr. Peoples interview was his description of what the spirit life was like. Were you able to use that information and share it
Yeah,
yet?
I I do that sort of thing, and that's why I often contact people where I can. Some of them are so busy they don't even notice I've tried to contact them, and so I can take little cuts off and share it, like on Facebook, I was saying earlier, or on my own YouTube channel, or I got another channel on a channel called BitChute. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's like you have heard of it. It's like Rumble or YouTube,
Right.
but with less censorship if I'm sharing anything more dodgy.
Ah, cool. Very
I,
cool.
I
Yeah.
don't mean in a dodgy in a nasty way. I mean things that the establishment might not like.
Right. And I'm very familiar that Rumble and BitChute will allow you to say things that you can't say on YouTube or other more
Yeah,
mainstream things. And I really love that we spiritual people have things to say, but sometimes the mainstream doesn't necessarily want to hear. So it's great that we have platforms that will allow us to share that information. So good on you. That's really good. But I did want to share that information that that piqued your interest. And we'll get more into Jim's story here pretty soon. But I think we had asked the question, what does it feel like when you pass over and you go into the spirit world? And Dr. Peebles said, well, if you can think of the most exhilarating moment you've ever had in your human life, then multiply that by 100,000 fold. That's what it's going to feel like. And then he goes on to say, it's a glorious sensation to be birthed over here, extraordinary in ways that I can't even describe in human terms. And that's kind of exciting, and we can't even describe what it's going to be like. And he goes on to say the colors are so vibrant, and there are hundreds more than you are aware of, and the sounds are more glorious that you can imagine. So it makes me look forward to getting over there. So anyway, I'm glad you were able to use that, and I'm glad that the good doctor led us to meet. And as you know, there when we're all on our spiritual journey, it's kind of like we know each other already, and there's that open heartedness, you know. So uh, anyway, everyone, this is Jim McQuitty, and he puts after his name the author because he is a prolific book writer. And if it's my understanding, you've written around 20 or a little more books.
Uh, Probably, but some of them are no longer available. Some of them have been superseded by other ones, so they either I've taken them down or they've gone out of print, one or the other. And I've got a great big pile of books here of my own next to me, all different ones. Let's see how many are in that pile at the moment. There must be about 15 current ones, something like that. That's my rough guess. Some of them are only thin little books, like well, the current one, the one that's coming out next week, my story. That's more of a little mini sort of autobiography, but not complete. So that's very thin, and so they do vary considerably. Like consider with the Great Awakening, that's a much thicker one. I suppose if you compare, if you can.
Right. Correct.
So yeah, there's a lot of books, but some of them are small and some of them are bigger.
One thing when I was getting ready to have this chat with you was, I always ask Spirit if there's anything I need to know. And is it okay if I share that information with you?
Oh, of course.
Okay.
I've tried very hard to be an open book throughout the rest of my life.
Oh,
Uh,
good for
you know,
you. Yeah. So what I picked up with you is I don't know if you're familiar with Dolores Cannon and her work. She was a hypnotist. Are you familiar with her?
I am. I haven't watched loads of her or anything. I don't think I ever read any of her books. I can't remember. I don't think I have.
Yeah.
My wife or partner, she might have done. But yeah. So I'm very familiar with her name, and she's well spoken of. I
Yes.
know that.
Well, she talks about, and this is what, Spirit told me, she talks about how these groups of people came in waves to bring about the Great Awakening. Um, you're the first waver. Okay. You were in the first wave. Okay. And Spirit told me that you were, the words they use, assimilator of truth. So what you do is you go find these truths that resonate with you and you write about them, and you write about the spiritual journey. So you make it easier for other people to understand. And so you're like one of these pioneers that came into the planet when it wasn't necessarily cool to be, going to mediums and things like that and learning about the afterlife. You did it at a young age. I think I read in your book, and by the way, I read my story um,
Yeah.
last night because I wanted to wait till right before we did the interview. And like, I think it was in the 70s when you were 16 or 17, you went to your first medium.
Yeah,
And
yeah. Well, that would have been in the 60s. So unfortunately, I'm that old. Yeah, I'm 74 now. Yeah, 1967 probably when I was
okay,
about 16 years of age.
yeah,
Yeah, the first medium. I was speaking about it earlier actually with somebody. Yeah, it was and she was absolutely fantastic. I don't know if you would have probably never heard of her. Her name was Jessie Nason. She was a real top class English medium, first one to appear on UK TV. She demonstrated in the Royal Albert Hall. And I didn't know any of that when I was 16, but she was a good one to start with.
Awakening? Would you say that
But
was that your awakening that there's another world out there that you can connect with and communicate? Would that say where your journey began?
in a way, yeah, that was when I realised that's when it confirmed to me that life goes on. You don't die. There's an afterlife and so forth, spirit world. Yeah, she convinced me 100% that very first meeting while I was sitting at the back trying to hide away, being 16 and shy.
Did she call
It's
on
good.
you, or you just observed her reading other folks?
Yeah. It was an open sort of meeting. I think there was a couple of dozen people there. Very cheap entrance fee, and she was really really good. And I still vaguely remember one of the communications was to a lady who'd lost her husband, and she passed on a lovely message from him. And there's no fakery involved, as we know. It would have been impossible in those days. Certainly no internet, as it hasn't been until the more recent decades, last couple of decades or so, if that.
Right. What really astonished me about, and I don't know how it is in England, I think that mediumship was a little more accepted back in the 60s and 70s. I think maybe the English culture kind of grew up with this mystical belief in mediums. Is that true? In the United States, it wasn't as much. It was considered woo woo and oh my God, you can't.
Yeah. Well, it was still frowned upon by the majority, but it was perfectly legal and acceptable. And there were vast numbers of what they call spiritualists that used to go to the spiritualist churches. The boom time of spiritualism in the UK was after or during the I think mostly the Second World War. There might have been some also in the First World War. This mediumship started in the UK about 1850s or something like that. And interestingly, I don't know if you know the history there, that sprang from a lady coming over from America, a medium coming over from America, got it started over in the UK, and it grew and grew. And eventually there was a court case with Helen Duncan, wrongly charged of being a fake medium. And they eventually changed the rules on that. They changed the law, and now spiritualism at the time was then made, I think it was at the time anyway, or around that time, was made an official religion in the UK. So there's only two official religions in the UK. One is the Church of England, started by Henry VIII, and the other one is spiritualism. So that's interesting, isn't it?
Very interesting. I also think, and you can chime in on this if you have a better understanding, but I just feel like that England has such incredible energy that because it seems like there are a lot of mediums in the UK and very interested in it. But I also think that the land supports that. Do you have any information on that, or am I understanding that right?
Support it. Sorry, I missed that bit slightly.
The land, the energy of the land, because there's all these ley lines and
Oh yeah.
energetic points. I suspect Isle of Wight is one of those.
Yeah,
Agree with
yeah.
that?
I do believe so. Yes. Yeah, it's been a place of like pilgrimage, not like the Catholic pilgrimages, but definitely a place where lots of people have come, poets and philosophers and other people studying all sorts that have come over here over the years, and we have got some monuments high up on the cliff tops, Tennyson Down, things like that, named after, I think he was a poet. I'm not really into poetry, but I think he was.
So they found
So,
kind of a connection with the land and maybe their own ability to tap into that other world.
yeah, yeah, and then of course across the whole UK, there's as I'm sure you know already, Glastonbury and Avebury and other places all over the country that are probably um, portals or main points on the ley lines. Um, in the old days, they'd have been considered sacred sites. You know, the energy would have been higher because the two energy lines cross. That's a spot that gets more energy. You know, I'm not an expert on all that, but that's my understanding, and I know that there's loads and loads and loads of people, hundreds, probably thousands, in the UK interested in that and pursuing that, and going around now and again. You learn of one who's gone somewhere to help clear any blockages and things like that. And there was somebody I knew. Well, I didn't know him personally, but knew people who went with his group to do or sacred prayers, basically. I think at sacred, what they called sacred sites to help clear any blockages. But that was going back a little bit. I hope more of them are cleared now. I think they're probably cleared, a lot of them. So I think because it's helping all the energies of the world come up as we know they are. I'm sure you know anyway.
Yeah. Well, my husband and I, we took a group of folks and did the Archangel Michael and Mary line. I think that you're familiar with Hamish Miller. He did
Yeah, yeah,
one
yeah.
that,
We saw him once.
cool. I actually bought a pair in Glastonbury of his hand forged dowsing rods. So I still have those today, and that was kind of fun to have that. We didn't meet him, but we traveled from Tintagel all the way across and ended up in Avebury, and the energies are just magnificent. And that's why I was thinking there's such a spirituality about the UK and the Isle of Wight. Why were you drawn to the Isle of Wight? Um,
It was a place I'd come on holiday with my parents when I was young, and a place I liked. And when I left, I wanted to leave London because I'd had enough of the big city rat race, as it were. Not that I was a high flying executive or anything, doing any sort of top job that would burn me out completely. But there was just something that said, "Oh, I just couldn't stand it anymore. I had to go somewhere quieter and countryside, seaside. Certainly the seaside. I always wanted to live by the sea, and so I tried a few, or I looked at a few places on the south coast of England, and and basically they were a bit out of my budget and a bit not the right quite the right place for me. I didn't feel. So I thought I'd try the Isle of Wight again, as I used to come over here, and found, yeah, this is the place to be. So I moved here and stayed here ever since. Even though, as in my latest little book, people will, if they ever buy it, it's mostly for relatives and friends. So I'm not really trying to flog it to people, but in there it will tell them that I nearly moved to Devon um, back in 2009, but we decided at the finish to stay on the Isle of Wight. So I'm glad we did at the finish. I think it's nicer here overall, and we're quite settled here.
very, um, I love that in your story, my story that you wrote, is that you made a lot of friends with mediums,
Yeah,
and I suspect that goes along with your mission. And I don't know if you know what your mission in life, but my sense of feeling, you assimilate truth. You and especially with the spiritual world, or and you've gotten a lot of your information by being friends with mediums and learning that and then sharing that truth out to the world to make it simple for them to understand. And I love that. Are you still doing groups in your home? I know you used to bring people and mediums to your home and doing groups. Do you still do that kind of thing?
Stopped after a while. It unfortunately it got a bit repetitive. We only had the same people to demonstrate and going into ever decreasing circles. We did switch it at one time to a hotel in Ryde. That was, we thought we'd get some new, different people, but um, we didn't carry on with that after a while because it ended up with the same scenario, really. So we stopped, and anyway, we were getting a bit older when we stopped. So we decided it was time. You can only reach so many people through different methods. And if I was better at personally making videos rather than cutting bits off at once, I'd make more videos. I'm trying to have a go at that in a more deliberate, personal way. You know, I found out how to record from a webcam and things like that. So I'd like to share more, but I mean, there's only so much you can say that with again, ended up repeating yourself. So trying to reach new people, and that's why I started writing. You know, to try and help beginners. Um, that was my first book, Golden Enlightenment. Try to explain things and questions and answers to help people that were first seeking to understand whether there was a life after death, and it's built up from there, really. One book after another.
And I love that. And I think that where we are on the planet now is that we have to reach that bigger audience. It's almost through technology now, and to just teach people what we've learned through our own experiences and what we've learned through other, people that teach us what they've learned. And I think we're in this, you call it the Great Awakening. I think that's one of the reasons why you came here, to lay some of the groundwork, um, for those beginners. You know what I mean? Because there's still a lot of beginners out there. There's still a lot of people waking up, and I think there's going to be a mass amount of people waking up. Do you know what I mean? In these days, as things get a little tougher, I think I don't know about you, but I've learned that suffering is a great teacher, and it makes us reach out and say, "Is there more to life?" I mean, that's how I started my spiritual journey. So I'm very interested in your Native American. Is it a painting back there? Is that your guide, White Cloud?
Oh, that one there, yeah, that's white cloud.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, white cloud. And up here I've got red cloud.
Well, tell me a little bit how you found out about White Cloud and how you feel that he has helped you in your journey.
I can. That's where to begin on that one. Yeah, I mean white cloud. I could give you a. I'll try and make it quick. The kept getting messages when I was going to various demonstrations. I'll have another swig.
Go for it. I'll have one with you.
Cheers. I kept when I was on the mainland with a previous lady friend. We used to go to demonstrations and that. You know, I used to go by myself, but then when I was with her, we both went together. And I kept getting told about a twin brother. And I thought, God, it was driving me mad, so keep telling me that. And I thought, I don't know anything about a twin brother. So eventually I asked my mother, who was still around at the time, did it, was I meant to be one of a twin, had she lost one and, not bothered, not bothered, but not chosen to tell me. So she probably wouldn't too, or quite likely wouldn't. But anyway, she said definitely not. Hadn't lost a child or anything. So, it was driving me mad. And then when I was doing that first Golden Enlightenment book, from my time on the mainland, I knew a very good medium who worked in trance, and she could be booked for private sittings. Even though I mentioned I was living on the island at that time and needed to travel to the mainland to see her, I did that twice and asked. I took a list of questions. A lot of them I'd already done the answers. the way I understood things, but I was looking for more confirmation, to make sure I got things reasonably right and all that. I don't want to be putting out dodgy information. I thought, let's get some confirmation there. And so we went through all the questions. She was very good. She carried on for at least an hour, if not more. And we got to the stage, especially on the second session with the trance medium, where I'd run out of ordinary questions. So I started asking the more personal questions. And one of the ones I asked was about this, kept being told about a twin brother. And it felt like a he, actually, but it was a female medium. But the spirit that came through felt like, to me, like the energy of a man. And he said to me that, I had a twin in lots and lots of past lives. And in this life, because he'd cleared all his karma, he didn't choose to come here. So he stayed in the spirit world to act as my guide. And that at one point he was going to come, but changed his mind. He would have come and we would have both been mediums on the platform, but the plan was changed. He stayed in the spirit world and I came, presumably with the mission of writing books. And so I was told through another spirit and trance medium to write books, or write anyway. Yes, so that was, and he gave me the name White Cloud, that spirit communication. And then within a couple of weeks, there was at the Ryde Spiritualist Church, there was a medium visiting from Brighton, an extremely good one. I had a private sitting with him, didn't tell him anything about the trance communication. And without any prompting, no questions or anything, he told me there's a big guide behind you, and his name's White Cloud. So it was confirmed within a couple of weeks. So took that as 100% proof then. You see, two different mediums, one working in trance and the other one working in clairvoyance, clairaudience, or whatever. A couple of weeks apart, and the mediums lived miles apart, and probably no chance or very, very little chance they even knew each other.
And that's really great. It's funny, when I was getting, before this chat, I kept seeing you standing on this cliff with your guide, White Cloud, and it was like you learned from each other in that lifetime, but it was like in the gosh, what would say it? The southwest of America is where I was seeing it, standing on this cliff. Do you know what I mean? And the two of you just standing there talking or reaching out, and talking about spiritual things. And it was really a lovely little vision that I had. And I thought, well, that must be White Cloud. But that's cool that he is a twin brother. I love that. And do you feel him or sense him every once in a while in your life, or?
I can never be 100% to say that it's a particular personality, but yeah, whenever if I say a prayer, especially, if I try to do anything like that, and I can often feel the energy around. I mean, as I put in some of the writings, the first time I ever tried it, when I was in Saudi Arabia in 1980, it was it was like completely all around me. It was, and I'd never had any of that before. I'd been to see Jessie when I was 16, but I'd never had the energy like that, and so that was another clear indication. And then, as I put, within a year of getting back from Saudi, I was directed to go and see Jessie again. Somebody told me that she was demoing again, and so the main part of my spiritual awakening and mission initiation, anyway, it was started off 1981, really, or 1980, from the probable white cloud all around me and the energy in Saudi Arabia, and then coming back directed to a medium, and then it started from there, building up to do what I do now.
Interesting. And sometimes,
Share truth, as you say. Try to anyway.
yeah, I find it interesting that like going to Saudi Arabia was some way part of your awakening. The energy of that area, just like I think you mentioned you moved to Australia. And sometimes spirit moves us to these places because the energy of the land, this goes back to the land, awakens things in us that we would not get if we just stayed put in one area. So that's why I think going to sacred sites or energies, other places like that, sort of shakes us up and clears our blocks a little bit. Where in Australia did you live?
I was in Australia. Well, I started in Melbourne, then I went to um, up north into Northern Territory, and then back down to Brisbane. Spent some time in Brisbane, worked in a pepper mill and so forth, and then eventually back to Melbourne, and then eventually back here, or back to the UK.
Yeah. Spirit moved us to Australia for a year and a half, which is sometimes I think we're crazy for doing it. But again, it was that energetic thing. We were moved to Byron Bay. Had you heard of Byron Bay near Brisbane? A little bit south of
I think I've heard of it, but I don't know where it is.
right, right. And we were moved there. So I find it fascinating that you were brought to that energy as well, of Australia to Saudi Arabia and then back to England. So I feel like for those of us on our spiritual journey, spirit moves us, even though we don't know that that's happening. We think we're making the decision and it's about, what we're doing. Spirit does that to shift the energies within us for our own awakening. I don't know if you sensed it that way.
I didn't, but it's quite probable without me knowing. I mean, I'm the dumb one of the two, but between myself and White Cloud, he was the one who cleared his karma, and I was the one who had to come back. But so, that's my light-hearted sense of humour, I hope, coming for it. But yeah, when I was in Australia, I did get to see what at the time we all called Ayers Rock, and or pronounce it now, or something. I can't remember how you pronounce it now. But yeah, I was on the coach going towards the Northern Territory or into the Northern Territory, and it actually stopped there for us all to get off and have a look. From distance from the road, So, but it was a nice sight. So I've seen a few sights, even if I didn't pay too much attention to them at the time.
Right. Well, we got to go to Ayers Rock as well, and we actually picked up a few stones and brought them back to sort of bring the energy back to here. Do you know what I mean? So we have these connections with these places, even if it's just a little vibrating stone, you know what I mean? It just kind of brings this web of connection to these different places. Um, yeah, and I wouldn't call yourself the one that didn't get their karmic lessons done. One of my favorite sayings from Dr. Peebles is that an old soul is nothing but a slow learner. And
Right. That was, I remember that, and I thought myself, that was definitely me as well.
but I'm still here and I'm still learning things. You know what I mean? I'm still clearing my stuff, and isn't that what a spiritual journey is about? I love that you drew a spiritual partner to you, in Carolyn, and I suspect you really feed each other on your spiritual journeys. I can imagine you have some good conversations about what you're writing about or what you're learning or that kind of thing. And so Milt and I call ourselves a team. We don't call ourselves partners. We call ourselves a team, partners in crime, so to speak. Um, just it's really good to have a partner as we're going through this spiritual journey. Sometimes we have to be alone, and sometimes we have a partner when we're ready, to really process and learn new things. But I love that you have a spiritual partner, and spirit brought you guys together. So would you say that spirit brought you together?
I definitely, yeah, yeah. I mean, where I used to work in Ryde for 6 years, um, publisher, ironically, that one of the main ladies there. There was a friend of mine from before I worked there. She was a medium as well. And I'll say was. She's passed on now. But when I got together with Carolyn in 2006, um, she actually told me she's the one because I'd worked my way through a few attempts to find the right one, as it were. Uh, and so that was good confirmation from her. And as I'll keep referring to the book as if I'm trying to flog it. But as I mentioned in there, Carolyn trains for yoga and other things like Reiki and so forth. And so she was on a very similar path, and she reads books on a very similar subject. Sometimes we share books or pass them on to each other. Sometimes they're not, what she fancies reading might not be quite what I fancy, and vice versa. But yeah, we do share things. She used to read more of my manuscripts, but um, probably because it's the same sort of subject going round and round. She got a bit bored, I think, with reading them. But she has read the latest one, being as it's short, and she's pointed out a few typos for me. So I've corrected those for when it officially comes out next week. People will be
Congratulations.
pleased to know about that.
Yeah, congratulations on your book. And I know that you wrote it for family, but Milt read it and he thought it was a really funny, it really drew him into your life. And Milt's a writer as well. So he really enjoyed reading. It was such a nice, quick read about your life. And, at one point you said, well, it's kind of ordinary at the beginning, but I don't know. I see someone who comes in at the age of 16 or 17 and goes to a medium and wakes up to the afterlife in the 60s, when it wasn't necessarily cool as kind of really important because it drove you, even though you had normal life in the middle of this, normal jobs and traveling to different places and that kind of thing. It's still that little seed was planted. That was not a chance encounter. That was a seed planting for you in your own journey that awakened you to your writing. You said you wrote your first book when in the 80s?
It was when I came over here, and I moved to the Isle of Wight in '92, and it was the first one came out in '94, 1994. Yeah, yeah. I mean the spiritual journey was the right one for me, I'm sure. So the back in the days when I was going to those demonstrations and that, I was when I was younger. Let's go back briefly to that. Like most, like you probably yourself, I don't know, but the lot of people ought, like I'm stumbling here a bit. I wanted to know the truth as a 16-year-old. It just didn't seem, if life ended and that was it, full stop, you're gone, snuffed out, you never existed. It seemed rather pointless. So I wanted to know the truth. So that's what drove me to go to the medium when I saw the advert. And what are the chances of me walking past somewhere and seeing a poster at a window? So, and I was the youngest person there at that demonstration in 1967, probably. So yeah, it was unusual perhaps for a 16-year-old to pay attention to it. And I wish I'd paid more attention from then onwards until the 80s instead of drifting off and doing other things. But one has to live their life as well and make their mistakes like I did. But won't go into too much detail on that.
No, I agree with you 100%. That's why we came here is to evolve our own consciousness and to grow our own soul. And we do that through pulling away, drawing near, that kind of thing. And uh, interestingly, I had my awakening around 93. as well. And I love your book. I forgot what the title is. The book about Christianity and what is it, man?
Yeah, the Christianity. Yeah, the Christianity, the sad and shameful truth.
Yeah, yeah.
That was
I love that, and I love that you tackled that subject. Do you know what I mean? Because I think a lot of times I was born and raised, fundamentalist Christian as well, but my awakening came about because I sat down and I asked, "Is there a God out there, and what is the truth?" And then that's when all the mystical and metaphysical things started happening in my life, and it's such a long story, but um, and then realized that I was a medium and that kind of thing. And that's a natural part of our spiritual journey, is that we have this connection with the divine. Not all of us hear it tangibly or, have the ability to see and feel. Not all of us are mediums, but we also have that connection in other ways, you know, or, you know, our belief is God exists in all things and there's only God. And so your exploration in this world has awakened you in your spiritual journey to say, oh, wait, I'm more than just this little earth suit. And I love that. Um,
yeah,
yeah. How do people,
yeah. I loved your story as well. I saw you on one of the interviews when it was about your awakening and that, and yeah, that was a really good one. That was from about, was that 10 or 15 years ago or something? That was a video out there online.
yeah, was it with Tabeth from Australia? Was she Australian who interviewed me? Probably.
Can't remember now. I watched it when we first made contact. I think it might be linked. Is it linked on your website? It might be.
It could be, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
it might be that one. Yeah, and I thought that was really good and worth watching. And good fun. Yeah, on the religion one, yeah, that was my second book.
Mhm.
It was one that was published. I found another little story there that is not in the book. But back when I was reading the psychic news, when it was a newspaper rather than a magazine, which it is now, there was a little lineage ad about an American publishers looking for books to publish, books or manuscripts. And I was writing the religion book because somebody had said something to me that drove me to think, oh, I'll tell a bit of truth about the religion or how I saw it anyway. And so I started investigating and putting everything down and all the rest of it. And it became a book called, which I sent to that, replied to the little lineage ad. It was a little lineage ad. And I spotted it in the psychic news, sent it to them. Some of the manuscript, some of the chapters had already done. And they said, yeah, they'd publish it, which they eventually did. It took a couple of years, backwards and forwards, when we had to just post things backwards and forwards on floppy disk type things or diskettes. We had to plug in, send them back, send me faxes. Oh, can you write add bits on this? Can you do this? Can you? So it was a rigmarole. But anyway, it did get published, but they weren't very good at selling it. They weren't any better than me at selling things, really. So it didn't go that far. But that was the template, as it were, for the current one, Christianity, the sad and shameful truth. I'm watching things like the Globe thing, the newspaper one, the exposure of the paedophiles and so forth. Dodgy subject for a spiritual conversation, but people need to be aware to understand that organized religion isn't always, or in my opinion, ever the best way to go forward in life, to follow in their beliefs. I mean, the ones they proclaim to follow, of course, like Jesus, and who's behind you, I think, and his mother and Mary Magdalene. Obviously, they're all advanced spirits, but they were never Christians themselves.
exactly. They were Jewish, actually. Um, and so yeah, I think that's great that you tackled that subject, Monkey. Um,
I'm the cat.
yeah, she always comes when I do things like this. She just wants to be part of the energy, I suspect.
I
Um,
mean, our one's on the bed in the other room.
Funny. But yeah, I do think, it's man that made religion. God didn't make the religion. And when we start looking for that truth, I think it reveals itself to us. That's the whole spiritual journey. What, you started it with, what's the truth about the afterlife? And I think it's so incredible that a lot of people start waking up on their spiritual journey once they've lost a loved one, or they have this question about, is there an afterlife? And that starts them on their spiritual journey. And that's what happened to you. And the universe showed up and gave you the answers, and brought you to the right people. Throughout this conversation, I keep hearing spirit saying they want me to tell you, you've done. They go, well done. You've done really well with, because you've brought this energy of, there is an afterlife, there is more to life, there is something coming, there is something better than being in these bodies. What would you say in your spiritual journey has been probably the most profound thing you've learned? Would it be that there is an afterlife, or have you just learned so many things through the journey?
I suppose that's the basic, isn't it? That's the first thing people need to realise, that there is an afterlife, as it's called. Life's eternal. You can't die even if you try. Physical body might, but I don't suggest everybody go out and try. Best to stay here while you're here, and see what happens in the future. Yeah, that's the main thing. But then after that, it's even more is spirit laws, to understand cause and effect, or karma as we call this at the moment, which I understand is going to be cleared from this planet in the future. It won't be a planet where people come with karma. It'll be one that's move beyond that. So that's quite an interesting concept. But at the moment, we've got cause and effect, and that's an important one to learn, because there are um, lower spirit realms when you pass on. Or you won't go there if you're an average person, or you wouldn't go there if you're just a bit naughty. If you're using polite terms, if you're a bit of a burglar or something, you won't go there. But if you're a murderer, a paedophile, etc., rapist, you're going to likely find yourself in some lower level or lower dimension. You're not stuck there, of course. You can progress from there. A lot of people um, don't want to believe in that, but it's difficult to convince some people. Not that I want to convince them in one way. Oh, there's some horrible place that you might end up. But yeah, I've got a book here. I did, didn't I? I didn't. I say didn't I? As if you know. There we are. Eight from Hell. Uh, in this, I list. I've got a story that I altered, adapted from an old manuscript from Victorian times. I mentioned the title of it. I can't remember what it is. I mentioned it in the book, and so I adapted that story, shortened it quite a lot actually, and changed it around. Added character names where there weren't any, just to make it a bit more personal, a bit more interesting. But in there also the other half of it, and actually I think I made it. Yeah, I changed it round at one point, and I'll start off. First half of the book is communications from multiple other sources that speak of these lower realms or lower dimensions of spirit life, and that once you get down there, you have to work your way out. Really, but you're not left alone. You're helped. There's people, rescue teams from the spirit world, who go there and try and help educate them, and you can work your way out by service to others. And that's as Silver Birch said, the coin of the spirit is service. So there's a lot to learn and there's a lot to be aware of. Spirit laws is probably the second, well, the most important thing. Obviously, you've got to know there's an afterlife first before you start thinking about where you might end up. And then, of course, you're not stuck there either. You're going to progress to higher and higher dimensions of spirit life, especially with these incoming energies now. We're all going to go, well, I don't know really, because some of the communications are quite interesting, really. Yeah, some of them have us all changing and our bodies becoming vastly different while we're still here, and not even dying easily. And I thought, I've got to stay here longer. But we shall see, won't we? And then it's a good adventure to hang around and see. So I hope I linger around down here, or not linger, but you know what I mean. Stay down here long enough to enjoy what unfolds and see the darkness slip away and disappear, and those directing it, causing it, vanish off with it, not necessarily to the dark realms, but wherever they go. And so they could eventually learn to do better as well.
Right.
Sorry, I've waffled on a bit there.
No. I really like that. I really like that, and I agree with that. I often think where you are in your spiritual journey, or if you're not, you end up in, when you pass over, in a like attracts like. You know what I mean? In a dimension that, if you harm others, intentionally harm others, you will end up in a place with other people that intentionally harm others. So you can learn not to do that. I mean, isn't that what karma is all about? To say, oh, I don't like that. You mean I did that to somebody else, and now I'm going to get it done to me? Isn't that what karma is? To choose differently, to maybe choose different. So I agree with that 100%. And I do agree that, there's so many energies coming in the planet. I do think karma is at work very heavily right now, on the planet, that we are clearing out our karma, but we have to face it. If I may quote from Dr. Peebles again, one of my other favorite quotes from him is, well, if you figure it out all in this lifetime, then what are you going to do? So, it's this ever lasting journey of discovering, and sometimes I even think, even as a medium, I haven't got all the truth. It's veiled in some way because I may not be ready to hear what the next level of truth is, but it's still a seed planting, that there's more out there for us to engage with and experience. And so I really appreciate you've written so much of this stuff in your books. What would you say is your favorite book you've written?
I think it would still have to be the Golden Enlightenment, the one, especially the 20-year anniversary one, simply because that's teaching people from the base upwards. That would teach them right from the very first, number one question: will I survive death? Obviously, that's an easy answer. I think that the short one would be yes, but I think I elaborated a bit more than that. And then it goes all the way through to the involvement of the soul, and how we move on about the higher self and so forth. Well, obviously in my limited understanding, but I've added in that one a few quotes from other people, what they've said as well. And so I think that's still my favourite overall. And another, it's another book that you think that I could go through it again and probably find other ways to express so many things and tweak a few things here and there again, because since I've done that update in 2018, I mean, that 7 years already, but more, or I think I have anyway, or I understand more, and basically your awakening coming when you said, asking the question. I did reach a point at one point of thinking, well, I don't know what else I can learn really. And then I did get something else, not in that sort of way, but suddenly I started getting other information coming in. I can't remember the source at the time, but I did think, oh, there is more to learn here. There is more of the spirit realms, um, way things work, and all the rest of it. And I started learning more and more that way, and that was interesting. Yeah, I do have moments of inspiration, seeing spirit people when I'm waking up or animals even. I mean, inspiration like the little book, it's only a very small one, The Involvement of the Soul. Um, I was trying to work out the justice of like a cat being stuck, being a cat forever and ever, as it were. Can you have forever and ever? But I thought, is that right? Can you progress? And I was sitting in a house or one of them, thinking there must be something else that I'm missing there, and that's when it dawned on me that if you can incarnate on other planets and then incarnate here, which some people apparently have, and I'm sure that's true now. At one point, I might have been a little bit more doubtful on it, but I'm positive it's true now. Then if you can swap bodies, you can go from a completely what we would call alien form, life form, into a physical body of a human. What's the difference between being a cat 1 minute and in a future life a human? It's no different whatsoever. That's the evolution of the soul. You move through the different species, if need be. And then I started finding material. There was White Feather, who speaks through a medium who's around still, Robert Goodwin. He had it in his books. I found it in White Eagle writing as well. I think there was a vague reference to it in some of the Silver Birches books, and there's others as well. There's a medium who's moved to Spain or somewhere. Ray Smith, I think his name was, in some of his books, and he had exactly the same. It's evolvement through the species, and Dr. Peebles said it as well in one of his communications. And their future humans. Sai Baba in India years ago, now passed on, Sai Baba, but he said that his elephant, I wouldn't call it a pet, his elephant will come back in a future life as a human. So that I started to find loads and loads and loads of people or communications from spirit mostly have said that. So that was another little book that ended up out there. So that explained evolution one way, or part of it anyway. I mean, I mean, say we move all the way through from the mineral kingdom all the way to the human, through everything, through vegetation, through third insect, animal, and one of the famous ones who's still communicating at the moment. Spoke through Alice Bailey years and years ago. He said that at that time, this is 1930s, I think, there was cat, dog, elephant, and horses. They were the four he mentioned anyway, that they can move from there, especially if they've got human contact and human love. That elevates them. They can move from there, jump life streams, White Eagle calls it. You can jump life streams into human next. So lots of them come back as humans next. So not only are we enjoying the company of our animals, we might be helping them to become humans in the future. And who knows, perhaps we can be their guides.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And often, for some reason, this popped in my head. Sometimes I think the Tyrannosaurus Rex spirit moved into the hummingbird spirit. You know how
Yeah,
they're
yeah, you never know.
yeah, you never know. To experience being the biggest creature, to experience being the small, and it's kind of interesting to think that maybe somewhere in our eternal life journey we were rocks that maybe that I picked up from Ayers Rocks and brought to where we are and that kind of thing. I know I think Milt has mentioned to you, oh, it'd be really cool to have some rocks from Isle of Wight. He's conspired,
Yeah,
I think, with you, and we're happy to send some to you just to bring that connection of energy. And you never know what little soul is abiding in that beautiful little rock that says, come be in this energy or go be in
yeah,
that energy. It's like traveling around that, rocks usually don't get to travel, you know. Um, but we assist them in some way and that kind of thing. I know there's consciousness is in everything. And we humans just sort of dismiss that. We just think it's in people, but it is in animals and it is in, and I just really appreciate animal communicators and people who can connect with the earth in that level. Have you written anything about that, or has it been mainly just about the spiritualism?
yeah. I haven't written anything about that particularly. I think it was in one of the questions and answers about animals continuing on and animal communicators. This famous ones like I think it's Melinda Messenger or something like that, and there's other ones anyway. They had one on TV not too long ago in this country, probably 6 months ago, going around and communicating. It was clearly correct what she was getting. And I used to talk about or shared on Facebook and other places. There was one in South Africa I think it was South Africa anyway, somewhere in Africa, um, with a rescued big cat of some sort, or might have been puma or something, whatever it was anyway. And she communicated with the animal and got some good information for the people that were then looking after it. It was more or less a rescue one, because it hadn't been looked at or treated very well when it had been caught by the original people who had it. I don't know if they were the original ones who caught it or bought it. And the actual animal was inquiring about two animals that used to be sharing a cage with, what happened to them. And the people told her, yeah, that's correct. And nobody had told the medium that was the case. So that was clearly evidential that the animal was communicating with her. And it had a happy ending because we learned that the other two animals had been rescued as well and gone to a good home. They changed the name of the animal. I think it was called Diablo or something. It had a name like Spanish meaning devil or something. And so they changed the name. So you might even find that one on YouTube still somewhere.
Yeah, it's Anna Brent. Oh, I can't remember her name, but it's Anna Brent. But
Well,
I think if you type in Diablo renamed Spirit or something like that, because I've heard that as well. And isn't it interesting that Charlie comes when we're talking about animals? So this is our
lovely. Yeah.
rescue dog, and his a human mommy passed away about 4 weeks ago, and
Sad.
we took him in, and so
Mm.
he's our new companion, or Milt's new companion. So mine as well, but he loves Milt as well. Cool. That I really like where that discussion went. I like that you wrote that book. Can most people find your books on Amazon?
Absolutely, 100% of those available are on Amazon. all paperback and Kindle.
Okay. Do you have a website, or just you put your books out on Amazon? Just look up, type in James McQuitty, and I think you should be able to find Jim's books. Do you have a website?
And what I created, I didn't. I stopped having a website. What I've created instead is some web pages um, for some of the books, and one a general one under my name as well. I'll email you the link. I mean, it's not central, but people can find them on Amazon anyway. But I mean, I did these web pages because I thought, well, it's nice because I can share lots of little bits on there, and they got a gallery, so I've got images on there as well, which is nice. So I thought they were better than the website. or am I just a cheapskate? It could be that.
Do you have a YouTube channel as well?
Oh yeah. YouTube's just under my name as well.
Okay, great. So we will put your name at the end of this video and some links. Uh, and we can decide, you can decide if you want us to put an email. If anybody wants to email you or not, you can just let us know. We're happy to add that to the end of this. Um,
Uh,
you're a delightful soul, by the way. And again, I just keep getting well done. You've done well, even though sometimes we think our lives going into third dimensional life and just working and things like that. But I've come to understand everything is spiritual and part of the journey, and so give yourself a little more credit that even though
Thank
you
you.
may hear clear more karma, well, I'm here too, and clearing karma and that kind of thing. But it's going to be an exciting time. Is there anything you would like to leave folks with about the age that we're in, the Great Awakening, that you would like to share before we wrap this up?
Uh, Well, I think it's look forward with excitement. Don't get dragged into any of the negative stuff, or not too much. I have a little glance and sometimes to expose things, but try to remember to mention the fact that life's eternal, so not to worry too much. I mean, obviously, we don't like to see people suffering, but try not to pay too much attention. Don't give too much energy, put it that way, to what is basically the dark side or the bad information caused by their actions. Um, and some of the spirit ones have told us that nobody really dies without their accepting it at a higher self level. So their soul is, they may appear to be a victim and that they've died as a result of medical actions, but it's their soul that's allowed them to go home. They could have stayed on Earth if they wanted to in cases, but certainly some cases. I don't like to say 100% that they could stay here because if a situation deteriorates your body too much, you might feel you have no choice from the spirit side because what's the point of staying if you're going to be virtually a vegetable? So I think I'm going into the negative side myself here, but you see,
No, I,
but basically, don't get bogged down for it. Look forward to what's coming, and look forward to it with joy and happiness because all going to be, it's all going to turn out lovely at the end. Turned out nice again. There was a expression from one of our, it was a song, wasn't it, from years ago. It's turned out nice again, and it's going to turn out nice again.
absolutely. Well, thank you for that. Thank you for your time, and know you're loved. And if you have an aha about anything, give us an email. We'll hop on a Zoom and you can share it on our YouTube channel and share it with your YouTube channel because it isn't about sharing what we know and helping others.
Yeah,
All right.
100% agree.
Agreed.
Thank you, and thank you very much, Susan and Neil, for allowing me to speak with you,
Oh, you,
and for what you shared with me in general, but also the spirit message there. I mean, others have said similar things, and of course, I don't always take that on board as much as I should. So I appreciate you saying that to me. Thank you.
all right. Well, know you're loved and let's keep in touch, okay? Hey, everyone. Just wanted to let you know that Jim and Milt have been planning to name the Isle of Wight and the Casa de Santa Maria sister sacred sites. We're excited about this prospect because buried beneath the Casa's Mother Mary's garden, beautiful, iconic, indigenous totem pole carving of Mother Mary are stones collected from 7 different world sacred sites. Places like Stonehenge, Sedona's Cathedral Rock, and the Aboriginals' sacred Uluru in the Australian outback. They've been exchanging stones from the Casa property, once home to the indigenous Pueblo and Tiwa tribes, and we will send them to Jim. And when Jim makes it to Choir Abbey, founded in 1132, he's going to place those Casa stones there and send several stones from there to be buried at the Casa statue. So we're excited about the prospect of anchoring these interviews together. Also, be sure and visit the CASA website at casadesantamaria.org. And if you sign up for our free monthly newsletter, you can get all kinds of information about the Casa de Santa Maria's healing sacred site, and you will receive 5 free spiritually focused ebooks, all free. And those ebooks are now being sold on Amazon, but you will get the PDF copies for free. So please sign up and join our mission to help heal the world one heart at a time. So this is our 3rd interview in our series of Ordinary People, Extraordinary Lives. So be sure and go back on YouTube and check them all out, or on our website, casadesantamaria.org. And also, you can really help us out by subscribing to this channel. We really appreciate it and know you are loved.